Summary of the Wasp Factory by Iain Banks. The young man Frank Caldhame lives on a small island in Scotland with his dad, Angus. Frank is isolated from the rest of the world, despite the fact that they are easily connected to the mainland across a bridge. Angus says Frank doesn't have a birth certificate. Because of this, Frank has lived on the island by himself his whole life. His father taught him at home and took care of all of his medical needs. A few years ago, Eric, Frank's brother, had a mental breakdown that sent him to the hospital and made him angry and dangerous. Eric just got out of the hospital and is on his way back home, which is how the book starts. Several days pass, and the story moves back and forth between the present. Frank is getting ready for Eric's return, and the past. Frank talks about his and Eric's lives and how they became the way they are. Frank thinks that the family dog, Old Sol, attacked him and butchered him when he was 3 years old. His being castrated changed his whole life by making him feel like a manless boy and pushing him to deal with this by killing and being violent. Frank kills his little brother Paul because he thinks Paul is a rebirth of the dog. Later, after Eric has a mental breakdown, he sets dogs on fire as a way to get back at the family pet that died a long time ago. Frank has also killed 2 other children besides Paul. Because his cousin Blythe had set fire to Frank and Eric's mice, he killed Blythe to get back at him. Frank also killed Esmeralda, his cousin. He didn't hate her, but he did it because he thought he had killed too many boys and needed to help make things fair by killing something girly. Frank is still angry and superstitious, even though he hasn't killed anyone in a long time. Around the island, he has set up a number of sacrifice poles that serve as guards. And for most of his big decisions, he uses something he made called the Wasp Factory. Frank put the old town clock called the Factory on the floor of his loft. He has put 12 death traps on each of the 12 numbers. He will let a wasp loose in the factory when he has a question, and based on how it dies, he comes to a different opinion. Over the course of a week, Eric calls Frank from different places in Scotland, getting closer each time. He finally gets to the island, which makes Frank both happy and scared. He is glad to see his bigger brother, but he is also afraid of being hurt by the violence and destruction he knows his brother is capable of. Frank learns a secret about his past the same night Eric comes over. Frank was born a girl named Frances, and Old Sol did not cut off his sperm. Frances had never had male parts, that's the truth. Old Sol hit Frances when she was a child, but the damage was not too bad. Despite this, Angus used this as a chance to test something on his child. He gave Frances male hormones and raised her like a boy. Frances is shocked by this, but she quickly adjusts to her new life and greets Eric the next morning as his sister.
About the author. Iain Banks was born and has lived most of his life in Scotland. He knew from a young age that he wanted to be a writer. In the late 1970s, he wrote a few science fiction stories that were never published. At age 30, he published his first book, The Wasp Factory. Banks wrote 27 books during his lifetime. His last book came out after he died. He also wrote short stories, several non-fiction books, and a collection of poems that came out after he died.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.